Okay, so I was talking about the use of patient-reported outcome measures in palliative care in low and middle income countries. So there's been a lot of work done on the development of palliative outcome scales, particularly from King's College in London, and initially in high income countries. And across Africa we developed a palliative outcome scale for sub-Saharan Africa, and we've been using that regularly within low and middle income countries. So I was sharing our experience around using the outcome scale in low and middle income countries, but also the importance of why we need to use an outcome scale, why we need to be able to looking at the quality of the care that we are providing, why we need to be able to demonstrate that we are providing quality care, and also to look at how we can improve the care that we provide, and the importance of hearing from the individual themselves, which is why it's a patient-reported outcome scale. So hearing what's important to them and how we are impacting the care that is being provided. I also shared about the use of a children's palliative outcome scale. Again, across sub-Saharan Africa we've been developing a children's palliative outcome scale, and that's the first outcome scale for palliative care for children. So we've been kind of leading the way in that, and I shared some of the challenges in developing that scale and some of the ways it's being used at the moment and how we hope it will be used in the future. Okay, so for example, the palliative outcome scale that we use in sub-Saharan Africa has got some questions on it that are looking at issues around pain and symptom controls. So are we making a difference in terms of managing their pain and managing their symptoms? But it also has questions around do they feel that life is worthwhile, and are they feeling at peace? So looking at some of the more existential issues that are important to the individual. Also looking at issues around do they feel they've got enough information? So often as healthcare professionals we provide information, but are we providing the right information? Does that individual feel they have the information that they need? So those sort of questions, but then also some questions for their carers in terms of whether they feel prepared to provide the support that that patient needs. So trying to look not just at some of the physical outcomes and not focusing on the disease, but focusing on the individual and looking at the physical, psychological, social and spiritual issues. So trying to see that individual as a whole person and looking at the outcomes in those different areas, which of course are quite difficult to do. So there's been quite a bit of work looking at how best we can do that. And tools such as the palliative outcome scale have been seen to be valid in that area. Okay, so the palliative outcome scale is, from my experience, I'll share some of my experience in Uganda. We use it in a variety of ways. So for example, the palliative care team at the National Referral Hospital will use the palliative outcome scale when they first see a patient, so that we get a baseline of what their pain is like, what are their symptoms like, whether they feel life is worthwhile, sort of when we first meet them. And then we will use it again maybe the following week or a couple of weeks later to try and get a feel as to whether things are changing or things are improving. So we use it in clinical practice to get a baseline and to see how things are improving. We also use it sort of as an audit tool. So every year we will take a sample of patients, and we will possibly use it more regularly, every 3 days or maybe 4 occasions, so that we can audit to see, are we saying we're good at managing pain? Are we good at managing pain? So we use it in audit, but we also use it in research. So one of my colleagues did a study to try and demonstrate the importance of having a palliative care team at the referral hospital, and he was able to show a difference in outcomes in patients who had had input from the palliative care team compared with those who hadn't, through using the outcome scale. So it's used for clinical practice, audit, research, and in some of the research that we've done, some of the nurses in Uganda, Kenya, other sub-Saharan African countries also say how using the scale gives them sort of permission to ask some of the difficult questions, or to ask patients how they are in terms of their spiritual, their well-being, whether they're at peace, things that are sometimes quite hard to ask. So we've also found that using the outcome scale helps them in terms of assessing and talking to the patient and their families. It's important for patients because we need to be looking at our practice to make sure we are providing the best care that we can. So by perhaps using it in an audit way, we can then look at where we need to improve our care. It's important for patients because it helps them to think through some of these issues as well, and it helps them to think about whether things are improving or not. It helps them to keep track of maybe their symptoms and things like that. It's also important for patients from a service delivery point of view, because if we can demonstrate the impact of the care that we are providing, then hopefully we can get funding and develop the service more, and so see more patients. So it's important for a variety of reasons. Okay, so one of the interesting things has been that there hasn't been a lot of comparison of similar areas across different countries, but there is now a collaboration that has been formed, an international collaboration, and we're looking at how we can utilise the patient outcome measures to look at outcomes across different countries, to look at baselines, so trying to see the challenges that individuals face in different countries. So we're just in that process now of trying to look internationally and cross-culturally as to similarities and differences. So hopefully for the next conference in 2 years' time we'll have some answers to that one. I'd like to see the international collaboration grow. I'd like there to be some way of pooling some of this data that we find, so from a research perspective. But I guess for me it's always important to think about the patient. So for me, in terms of the ongoing development of an outcome scale for children, the regular utilisation of an outcome scale within palliative care for adults, so that we can continue to improve the care that we provide for individuals and their families, because that's the important thing. Yes, so through the International Children's Palliative Care Network, we've developed a pain assessment app for children. It's surprising how many people, even in low-income countries, have smartphones these days. So we developed this app where children can keep track of their pain. It's that they can choose an avatar and choose a person for themselves, and then they can record where their pain is, how severe it is, and there's different ways of doing that. And it keeps track of that, so that when they then go and see the doctor, they can take it with them, and the doctor can see what's been happening for this child's pain in the last week or the last 2 or 3 weeks. And we've got examples of children and young people who have really found this app to be very helpful, as it does just that, because they go to the doctor and the doctor says, how's your pain, and they can only think of really how it is now, and it's quite hard to explain from the last 2 or 3 weeks. So having this app has been found to be very useful and helpful in the ongoing discussions with the doctors and trying to manage their pain. So at the moment it's free to use. You can download it from the App Store, both for iOS and Android. And currently it's in English, but it's just being translated into other languages. So we're hoping that more children and young people around the world will use it. It's quite intuitive, and we tried to make it fun as well. And it's, most young people these days are kind of glued to their phones, aren't they? So having their phone with them, it makes it easy to do. As I said, it keeps track of it, and so far it seems to be user-friendly, and we're trying to pilot it in different countries to get feedback from different ages and different cultures as well. We've seen some real improvements in how children and young people's pain has been managed because they're able to keep more of a record of it. They've been able to discuss it better with the doctors, and they've been able to get more help in terms of managing their pain. So yes, we've seen some real improvements, which is really exciting. The importance of children's palliative care, and obviously this is a cancer conference, and so providing palliative care for children should be an integral part of any cancer care programme. And it's exciting to be at this conference and to be able to talk about palliative care and input into different discussions in that field.